Stream is streaming. Flux capacitor fluxing.
At capacity.
Yes. All right, and the channel is live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Adventure on So Many Levels. We're gonna play some Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah!
I am Christiana Ellis, and I am the Dungeon Master tonight. Our players: Chooch Schubert as Sequential,
Hello, hello.
Paul Fisher as Zinhorn Windborn. Oh, and he's muted.
Good evening. Great to be here.
Starla Hodgton as Carolina Swift.
Hello, friends.
Mark Kilfoyle as Nedry Shiny Rock.
I have to learn to write with both hands at the same time so I can get all the questions down.
And last but not least, Vivid Muse as Trina of Harley.
Hey, y'all.
So, who wants to talk about what happened last time? Well, you signed some contracts. You did some
There was
researching.
dinner.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah, yeah.
There were dead people.
There were dead people.
Well, one,
Two.
Two, yeah.
but we only talked to one.
It's true. So you signed some contracts. You discussed some plans, and you did some speculation and theorizing, and then you went and you did. You went to the Temple of Rushama, and chose to have Zinhorn's friend, Father Wilhelm, Wilfram, do some a speak with dead ritual, and asked the body of Elister some questions. And as frequently happens when you're trying to talk to a skeleton, it didn't give you necessarily all of the details that you would have liked.
It was kind of evasive.
Protective,
Kind of
I
very
think.
evasive.
Well, to some extent, that indicates that's some information all by itself, though, right?
Yep.
You certainly get an impression of his attitude about certain things. But you completed that ritual, and I think you were perhaps on your way out of the temple, unless you had additional business there.
No, not that I know of.
And I think at a... Gosh, it just occurred to me that you all are going to get a ascending from Yobert, but it just occurred to me only just now, which of you would Yobert do the sending to? I think it's Zinhorn, because Zinhorn was sort of the first to come and check out the contracts. And especially since you were the one sort of leading this effort to go do the Speak with Dead, I think that you, Zinhorn, received this sending from Yobert, which says just some contacts for you. Librarian Everhart at University Archives. Burdil Luneros Real Estate Office by North Gate of Old City. Professor Tinthis still teaching at Institute. Cheers.
Okay.
And so you can reply to that if you like with up to 25 words.
Thank you for the information. We will investigate. All right. And I didn't write. Did someone write that down?
Trying to. That was
I
fast.
can read it again. I'll read it again.
Read
for
that
you.
again.
Sure. Some contacts for you. Librarian Everhart at University Archives. Burdil Luneros Real Estate Office by North Gate of Old City. Professor Tinthis still teaching at Institute. Cheers.
I got most of it.
All right.
So,
Librarian Eberhart at university.
hmm,
What was the second one?
Burdell, that was the realtor that
yeah,
had
that
had sold the Cutting Oak.
right. That's the person that Emeril bought the Cunning Oath from.
And Professor
Tinthus.
Mhm.
still
Look
teaching.
around. Yeah.
Uh,
Apologies for
so,
the shuffling
where
here.
would we like to go?
In regards to did somebody inquire about a professor at the university?
Yes. The professor was mentioned in the letter from Ellister.
Hmm.
Oh, that's okay. And
That's
yeah, it was the really need a notebook.
yes.
It was the he had the I'm gonna have to pull up the letter to figure out what that was because I don't remember off the top of my head.
I mean,
Uh,
I don't need you to, like, you guys, I would imagine, have the letter with you so you could pull it
Yep.
out. Essentially, the reference to Professor Tinthus was that when talking about how Ellister was sort of predicting what might happen in the future, but suggesting that, like, the only reason you would ever be reading this letter is if things don't go well. So, him trying to guess what's likely to happen reminded him of probabilistic incantations with Professor Tinthus.
all right. I'm suggesting we go meet the professor.
Sounds reasonable.
Yeah.
I mean, up to you guys.
All right. We're gonna, since we're all together, we're just gonna tromp on over to the university where the professor is teaching.
Mm-hmm.
See if we can find out when he might be available to meet with us.
So, the institute referenced in Yobert's message this is something that you all would know, which is that when you talk about the university in Pashan, there's the Pashan Imperial University, which is kind of like the main place, like the original school that was always there before. And then there's also, yeah, there's the old campus, but then there's also the downtown campus, which is where they've expanded a lot of stuff and tend to do things that are for mage rights, which is generally like people who get kind of an associate's degree and become like someone who's really good at mending, or, you know, uh, they're a plumber who learns how to cast control water and that sort of thing. Um, and then there's the Institute for Advanced Magic, which is primarily like technical research, and it's less about like students and classes and more about research there. But what Yobert did say, Professor Tinthus is still teaching at the Institute.
So we would head to the Institute
Mm-hmm.
of Advanced Magic.
Right. Did you miss the sending, Mark? You were briefly AFK. Did you?
No, I got
Okay.
the first sending from Yober. I got all that.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Well, that's all. I was just checking. All right. So you guys are heading to the where the institute is, but a lot of this sort of area is kind of nondescript because it isn't the sort of the beautiful old campus that's designed for, like, the prestige and everything. So what you have here is a lot of sort of blocky, more functional buildings, but with the occasional weird tower spires sticking out of otherwise just kind of blocky, almost brutalist buildings. But would any of you, do you think, have any experience with the Institute? Would you know anything about it or have ever had any reason to go there?
I'm quite sure that Master Fincher would have mentioned it. I don't think he'd actually gone there. I don't think Nedry's actually gone there.
So I think that typically most people, even who would follow like advanced magic, circles, like if you don't actually work or study there, they don't, they're pretty secretive about stuff until they're ready to publish stuff, which they do regularly, but everyone who's doing research there jealously guards everything they're working on until they can publish it, because that's the whole point. They don't want anyone to beat them to a discovery, that sort of thing. So it's generally speaking not a place where you are just sort of, have randos just walking the halls and saying, hey, what's in this lab? So I think you do know where like the main building is. But again, it's not just like a big open campus. So there is sort of a like an entrance with a reception area that's clearly like people who are recognized get to go right through. And then there's people like you lot who show up and have kind of a sort of a long-suffering, impatient half-elf receptionist just look to you and just raise an eyebrow.
I think along the way, Nedry would have said something like,
Master Finster says the most amazing thing that they invent is their own self-importance. I'm not sure if he was joking or not.
Well, I think we're going to find out.
Did
Hold
we
on
get
one
did we get a paper or some sort of note, like written permission from Yobert?
What he gave you, I think, was like it was the like letter of credit for like purchasing things and that sort of thing. But you had spoken to him about like getting access to the university library, but you suspect that was the nature of his suggestion that you talk to Librarian Everhart, is that like that's who he had spoken to for you to get access there.
Okay.
So you don't have anything that says, "Dear Institute receptionist, let these unruly heathens through your door and wander around unsupervised."
Right.
We may
And-
be able to go into the word of doing research. It's most of what they do here. And I'm doing research, just not maybe the kind they're interested in.
Well, but we're at the institute to talk to the professor, right? All right. It's a half elf. Is there any kind of like nameplate?
Yes, and it says, it says, I'm just trying to think of what's the appropriate title. I think it says Administrator Severil is on the nameplate. He notices you look down at the nameplate. Like, obviously, you are. So you say hello, and he just says, hello.
We were wondering if you could possibly direct us to Professor Tinthis.
Who's us?
My friends and I.
Yes, but who are you?
Well, I'm Carolina, and this is Sequential, and Zinhorn. He's a cleric at the Temple of Rushama, and then this, and I'm kind of motioning to Trina. This is Trina of Harlee, and this little one over here. This is
I'm Nedry Shiny Rock, a student in training for Master Argus Fincher, Master Abjurer.
So, quick question: do you think that your master does travel in like institute circles, or does he mostly do his own thing? I don't think we really talked about whether he has direct connections to the university or no.
No, he's in the Raven Quill
Right,
district
yeah,
because
yeah.
he kind of doesn't have those essential. But this would be the transmission of secondhand pride, because the master definitely
Sure.
would have that kind of opinion of himself,
Yeah.
and his name carries weight. And Nedry is hoping that it does still.
I think when you say that, this half elf just kind of looks down his nose at you, and you're already like down there, right? So like it's almost like work. It's like a hard position for the neck to look down his nose at someone who's like so low to the ground. He has to kind of lean way down over the desk, and he just says, "Well, I'm sure that would be very impressive if I had any idea who that was, but."
Your ignorance is not my problem. We just need to go inside.
Well, it just so happens that you can't. Good day.
Why?
Because you don't have an appointment?
How do you make an appointment?
You definitely get like a look of frustration because clearly you're supposed to make an appointment with him and he doesn't want to now. So it's like, well, I suppose that you would register and submit a request with the proper forms, and assuming that the person you wish to make an appointment with accepts the appointment, then you would be permitted in. Assuming you are not
That sounds
members
pretty
of-
easy.
Well, I suppose you can fill out the forms, but I can't imagine that Professor Tinthis has any interest in seeing you.
Well, we just had a few questions for him. I don't know if this would mean anything to him, but it's regarding Alistair.
Well, it certainly doesn't mean anything to me, but I suppose
Well,
it doesn't hurt to allow you to fill out the forms. And he
That's very nice of you. Thank you so much.
leans down and, like, from a stack, you hear him pulling out like several sheets of paper, and he hands each of you 3 pages worth of like an application to make an appointment.
Nedry's going to sit down to study it as I rush away for a moment.
Okay.
Wonder if Lord Relenth would have somebody that does this sort of thing, or
Are you saying that like to?
yeah.
like
I would
impress
just
this
wander
guy?
that out loud. I wonder if Lord Relenth has somebody who does this sort of thing. I mean, it seemed like he said we should just show up.
All right. Here's a question. For sequential, is this persuasion or is this intimidation?
No, this is just talking out loud.
Okay, but I'm saying that you are trying to
Gotcha,
get
gotcha,
him to
gotcha,
do
gotcha.
something as a result of what you're saying, right? So
Right.
So I guess my point is, in
Right.
your mind, is what you're saying is like, oh, you would like and be impressed by.
It could be
Lord
persuasion,
Relent,
'cause
and
it would
so
be, yeah,
If you know that
like-
I'm with him, then you'll be impressed by me.
Yeah.
Versus,
Yes.
like I know a noble and I'm going to get you in trouble if
Right.
you don't do what we say.
No, I think it would be, yeah, I think it'd be more persuasion. Just,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, let's get a roll then.
Maybe that extra information would be worthy of an 11.
All right. The 11 gets you the eyebrow raised again, because it went back down when he concluded that you were not worth his time beyond handing you the papers that he has to because it's literally his job. But you hear he just says, Lord Relenth.
Yes, do you know him?
Not personally.
Oh, well, that's a shame.
Oh.
He's so nice.
We're in his
Lovely
employ.
gentleman.
This is an errand for him. So, I mean, maybe that's what we should have opened with.
So, Lord Relenth wishes to speak to Professor Tinthus?
He wishes us to speak with Professor Tempest.
Well, I suppose that I could find out if Professor Tinthis has an opening today. But I will require you to complete those forms, if you please. And stay right there. I will be back.
Appreciated.
And then he goes through some door, like, so he's behind like a desk in it's almost like sort of a bank teller situation where like he has his own door behind the desk, and that's the way he goes, and it's not the way that you would go if you were permitted entrance, but so he goes back there somewhere. So what are you all doing while you're here in a fairly banal waiting room type of area? Like, there are places to sit. There's low tables, which are not especially conducive to like leaning over to fill out paperwork in. But you also get the impression too that like the waiting room's not nice because generally speaking, people are either there because they already have business there and then just go right in. And so your situation is actually somewhat unusual.
Andrew just sits cross-legged on the floor, pulls out his big book as a desk, and goes to work on the paperwork.
Zinhorn pulls out his small book and starts reviewing the paperwork.
Okay. I mean, the paperwork itself is like nothing special. It's just total bureaucracy, red tape. It's you. You're supposed to provide like a lot of identifying information, like your current residence, your current level of education, 2 character references, who you're there to see, and also what it's in regard to, and also if you have any affiliations with other city organizations. And it's just like very boring stuff, but it's very granular and boring. So, do any of you do anything other than just sit there and try to fill it out?
I was actually wondering if there was anything in the way of personal effects on the desk.
Oh. How about you make a perception check? I think because the nature of the desk, it's a relatively high desk, like he's sitting on a stool behind it, and so there's sort of a like a chest high, area to place stuff on. And so if he has anything, it would be behind that. So let's get a perception check to try to spot anything back there.
It's a 13.
Okay. He has a little cactus in a tiny little pot, and there is a photo of what looks like a sort of a forest landscape that has 3 individuals in it. One of them, which seems to be him, smiling kind of awkwardly with 2 other half elves next to him. One of them doing bunny ears behind him.
Nedry flips the sheet over to continue the list of papers that he's published. Includes his Tezatam membership on there as well.
So eventually, this several comes back down and just says, "You will be permitted into one of our conference rooms. You are not to wander the halls. Professor Tinthis will come to meet you shortly. I apologize for indicating that he would not want to meet with representatives of such an illustrious name as Lord Relent."
I'll need a minute. I'm almost finished with your form.
That's good. We could help you overcome some prejudices.
Ow.
He just says, all right, the forms now, forms.
just add
I
etc.
have folded up the paper into like an airplane, and I just kind of put it behind my back.
Okay. It's like
I lost it.
Trina made a little ball out of hers, and she's kind of like poof, poof with her trunk, just kind of bouncing it up in the air. And then she's like, surprised, what, this?
yeah, yes.
Oh,
well,
I thought
just-
there was
just
supposed
that-
to be one for the group.
well,
Wasn't Nedry handling that?
yes, that's fine. Just hand it over. I do. There are protocols about this sort of thing. It's highly irregular to have people just coming and cutting the line, but of course, you are welcome to as emissaries of nobility. So thank you for coming to the institute.
Nedry hands back his pieces of paper. You should really add more space. There's not quite enough. Also, you have the weirdest field of research. I'm not sure what you're trying to learn here, but maybe you need to branch out.
He's looking at the list. Are these actual like legitimate publications, you think, or are these like zine articles and stuff like that?
It's definitely a combination of both. There's Tessatam articles in there. There's like the papers that are in progress. Tessatam is an acronym. The
Oh right,
what is it?
yeah,
the Eternal Scholars of the Amplified Mind.
right. So he kind of, I think he sort of starts to scan it like it's just like, all right, this is fine, but then he kind of eyes widen and like, all right then. So now that the protocols have been observed, he presses a button under his desk and the doors kind of spring open. And he says, "The second room on your left is the conference room. As mentioned, please do not wander the halls."
Right. Second room on the left. Right?
Yes.
Got it. I hand him Zinhorn's paper, which has been, mostly filled out in kind of chicken scratch, and say, you seem rather nervous. You might try, a calming herbal tea and maybe a few prayers to Rushama. Might help you calm down.
Make a persuasion check.
Persuade. Natural 20. That's a 23.
So you see as you're saying all that about the tea and everything, there's like the same sort of stern kind of affronted face, but then like the lip starts to quaver just a little bit. It's actually been a really hard day. So yeah, of course, yeah, tea sounds great. So thank you. Good. It's actually, it feels very cleansing just to say it out loud. Usually I have to maintain such a professional decorum.
It's all right. You're among friends. And I hug him.
So, like, are you hugging him like across the
Oh,
chest high reception
yeah.
counter?
Yeah.
He leans forward and then says, "Ouch!" because he put his hand on the cactus. So he like brings his hand back up. He's got like a couple of spines, and it's like, but yes, thank you.
You're welcome. What is your name?
Several.
Zevral? Yes. Mm-hmm. It was good meeting you. Try and take it down, relax, and have a better day than you've been having.
Okay.
And I will follow the rest of my
As I go, I'll
Nice.
say, "I like your cactus," and wave at him.
He waves back and he's still got the spines in it.
What
All
sort
right.
of research do you think he's actually trying to do? I mean, I kind of understand the experiment, but not exactly what the measurements are.
talking about Zevral, or are you talking about everyone else at the Institute?
Well, I haven't met everybody else yet. I may be able to.
Well, for now, we'll go to the second room on the left and look around. Be nosy.
All right. Well, so I think there's not a lot to see in the immediate corridor. You know, it's a long hallway with lots of doors on both sides. But if you do follow the directions, the second door on the left does seem to be a small conference room. There's a table in there and chairs. There's like a pitcher of water and some glasses sitting on the table. There's a tiny dusty window that gives just a tiny bit of daylight coming in. You get the sense that this is the sort of room where you have a square about this big of daylight that moves across the table over the course of the day. But yeah.
I would like to use prestidigitation to clean that dusty window.
Here's a question. This is just fun to think about, I think. When you use prestidigitation to remove dust or dirt from something, does the dust, disappear? Or does it just come off of the thing? So I'm just you clear it off the window. Does that mean it just fills the air?
I like to imagine that it effectively disappears.
And nobody knows where it goes.
But it's
somewhere there's
goes.
Yeah.
There's a pocket plane of prestidigitation.
Yeah, the
paraphernalia.
ethereal plane is super dusty because it all just ends up.
Yeah.
That's why it's all gray and misty.
Yeah.
Hey.
Got some farmer plowing his fields, and then all of a sudden just dust starts to trickle down, and he just looks up and says,
Mages.
yeah. So in any event, you're sitting there in the conference room. Yeah. So there's not a lot to see or do in this little room. It's boring by design, but assuming that you hang out for a little bit, yes.
Oh, absolutely.
Nedry
I
sits
would
down,
probably.
takes his book out.
Yeah, are we going to wander? Or are we going to wait?
Well, I would probably pass the time teaching Nedry about the shell game because I only use it for educational purposes.
Oh, sure.
He's got his book out,
Just
taking
like
notes.
Mugen.
Yeah,
So
I'm good
I
with
want to
waiting.
show him all of the tricks and how it works so that maybe he will come to an understanding about the control of the P is really the important element to this, not so much being able to follow it with your eyes.
So it's really just a trick?
Essentially, yes, but I mean, I only use it to entertain. I never place bets on this because that's not fair.
Well, no, especially if it's a trick. But what if I were to use magic just to see where the P was? Then I could out-trick the tricker.
That is true.
Or maybe I just create another P. Or get rid of the one that's there. Or add a fourth shell.
Well, I think in the case where if you were playing this on the street, that might not be a wise idea because a lot of times the people that are running these games, they might associate with people who are of ill repute, I suppose I could say. And they may not care for you tampering with trick seems very negative because I mean it can be very fun. I mean if you're honest about it and just do as the game intends or you're just shuffling around the P, then it can be a lot of fun and a challenge.
So imagine this little P. And this shell over here, I'm going to name Alistair. And this one over here is Azeld. I don't have a name for the other one. It might be Professor Tinthus. We're not really sure yet. And the little P is Dinethur. Because every time we seem to be getting closer to it, it covers over and then moves somewhere else.
Well, I feel like just from hearing Alistair talk about it, that perhaps that's intentional, and that we were never meant to find it.
So if you understand the shell game, you might be able to figure out why they're hiding it and where. That could be
Well,
really
it's all
useful.
about understanding motivations of the person moving the shells around.
I'm not really good at that. Can we try something else instead, like just reading their minds?
That's not a skill that I personally possess. Can you do
Nedry,
that?
Nedry flips to the back of his book, makes a note about another thing he has to learn to do.
So I think it's not long after that that there's a short knock on the door, and it opens, and you see revealed before you a dark elf wearing wizardly robes. He does seem to be, relatively aged as dark elves go, in the sense that he certainly would, you would guess he's probably upwards of 250 or more. And dark elves, of course, have the very sort of deep purple complexion, white hair, and he enters the room, and he just says, "Representatives from Lord Relent."
That would be
It's
us.
us.
Frankly, yes. Although, really, in a way, I suppose we're representatives of Alistair.
He kind of just frowns and, what do you mean? I assumed that Lord Relent was perhaps interested in funding my research. Is that not while you're here?
Well,
Please have a seat.
yes.
What sort of
he's wary
research do
now.
you do?
Like what is this? What research do you do? Is what you asked?
Yeah.
He says, "Well, my focus is on the predicting of complex, systematic. It's difficult to explain in layperson terms, but you're familiar, I'm sure, with divination magic, which does things to predict the future and so on. But generally speaking, it is very difficult, even for powerful divination magic, to tell the future more than a short while out. Some spells can predict the outcome of events that might happen in the next hour, or even a couple of days, but much beyond that, and the world is too complex to be predicted out that far, sometimes even for god-like powers. And I focus on the use of advanced mathematics called probabilities in conjunction with divination magic to try to extend the reach of our predictive capabilities.
Did,
Probabilistic incantations. It makes sense. The words
yes,
kind of
that's-
made
that
sense.
that is one of my advanced level classes.
Oh.
Do you, by any chance, remember a student by the name of Alistair? We're uncertain of how long ago this was. Perhaps there was someone with him named Isolde?
Yes, I do remember Alistair and Isilda. Uh, what brings you to ask of them?
Well, where would you, this might be a small bit of a shock.
Alistair's really dead. Izel, we're not really sure of.
Well, I suppose I always thought that was possible. They
Well, almost everything dies. That really is quite probable.
Yes, well, also, everything does is die, but not everyone disappears suddenly and drops out of all of their classes suddenly and is never heard from again.
True. We were wondering about it when he disappeared.
Let's see. I had been I had been here at the university perhaps 15 years, which was I came shortly after the big conjunction where all the planes realigned, so to speak, and the Dark Elves were free to emerge from beneath Rushama and find callings elsewhere in the world. So I suppose it would have been about 85 years ago now that I had Alistair and Isilda as students. Although I'm sure, you say Alistair is dead, I'm sure Isilda would. So they both appear to me to be humans. Standard student age, perhaps early 20s, was how I took them. But they were quite adept students, and they took to my field quite readily. They were very astute and insightful, and I took them on as apprentices. But I came to feel over time that some of their insights were not, in fact, genuine inspiration, but rather a revelation of something they had already known and were only then choosing to reveal to me. I had never quite been able to put my finger on it, but I just, over time, began to feel certain that they were either older than they purported to be, or appeared to be, or in possession of some other knowledge that they were keeping from me, and that their studies with me, they were certainly keen to learn everything that I could teach them, but sometimes I felt almost as though it was less about knowing it themselves and more about wanting to know how much I knew. It was a bit disconcerting, but as I say, I never had any proof of anything like that, only times where they would make some seemingly intuitive leap on some particular problem, and I would just look at their work and I couldn't see how they would get from one thing to another unless it was a matter of having known the destination already and choosing at that point to pretend that they had only come to that.
Isn't that what your research is all about?
Well, it's a valid question, but my feeling on the I don't feel that it was naturally occurring. I feel that it was to some extent a deception. And I don't know why. Further, although this could perhaps just be attributed to mistakes, some of the things, the discoveries that they assisted with me on uncovering, I have in the years since discovered were subtly incorrect in ways that would render the incantations ineffectual.
Almost as if maybe they were trying to slow your progress.
If I am to believe my own instincts and impression of them that they were deceiving me, that is the conclusion I would be forced to come to. Now, I don't know why this would be the case, but it all came to a head when I confronted them on this. I accused them to their faces of knowing more than they pretended to, and that I really needed to understand what they were really doing there assisting me. And it seemed as though for a moment that I had made some headway, like they were planning to let me in on whatever the true ulterior motive of their research was. They began speaking. This gets rather technical. There is such a thing as a probabilistic ward. And the way this works, you may be familiar with some arcane wards, like, for example, an arcane lock uses a precise magical incantation to create a lock to hold a door closed. Yes?
Mm-hmm.
But that incantation is known. And should one have the capability of dispelling a magical incantation, it is a simple, trivial matter to say, if this is arcane lock, I can dispel arcane lock because I can unravel the known incantation. But with a probabilistic ward, there becomes an element of the incantation which is randomized. And without knowing the randomized element, it becomes virtually impossible to guess it and thus dispel it. Now, the person casting it has sort of a key that can unravel it.
Like
But
a
any-
midnight stone?
Like a what?
Like a midnight stone, maybe? Yes? Or would that be what the spell was cast on?
When you say midnight stone, what are you describing?
So I would describe
They also call it a
thing that
button.
we.
Well, we
Yeah,
didn't see the stone. We only heard about it.
Well, no, when we were down in the basement, isn't that what she like pushed at to trigger the?
Well, the Midnight
Yeah.
Stone was the piece that was missing, and that's what he was hoping to replace with the Feather Stone.
Not quite correct. It was the
Oh.
midnight stone was the thing that was outside that she got you all sucked in there with when she
Yeah.
activated it.
Oh, it was the power source. Pardon. me.
Yeah, that's what I said. That was the thing that she poked that sucked us all into the pocket dimension.
So basically it was kind of a sort of a dark green, kind of almost jade-like stone. There's a little iridescent to it, was what it like looked like visually.
So that's what I would describe to him.
Those are exceedingly rare artifacts. Has Lord Relenth uncovered some of these midnight stones?
He has uncovered the location of one of them.
But it's been covered again.
Literally.
I would be very much interested in examining and studying such a stone. Were you able to provide it? I have a lot of specialized equipment at my laboratory that I would be happy to share whatever I learn if you were able to provide such a fascinating research subject.
Well, do you think, kind of looking at Nedry, do you think when the pocket imploded, exploded, do you think that would it have been destroyed in that? If that was the key to get in, do you think that would have been that collapse of that pocket would have destroyed it.
Artifacts are really tough. It's inaccessible, but we can look for it. But what is the Midnight Stone? It sounds as though it's not quite what we thought it was.
In some respects, I suppose you could oversimplify their description as a sort of storage device where all sorts of things can be concentrated, and that includes things that you might not normally expect could be concentrated, such as magical energy, or, as it sounds like this one may have, space, creating a sort of pocket dimension, somewhat like a bag of holding or portable hole, these sorts of phenomena. But there is some unusual qualities to the magic of a Midnight Stone that are difficult to express without getting extremely technical.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Carolina's eyes have already glazed over.
Andrew's eyes are like the size of saucers at this point.
So, is this Midnight Stone connected somehow to Alistair and Isilde?
Yes. We believe that the Midnight Stone was a power source for, as you say, like a small pocket dimension, and that Alistair got pulled in there, and that he was unable to get out.
Someone booby trapped it, I guess, according to the letter, maybe? Does that sound right?
Booby trap.
Or maybe booby trapped the circle itself. It wasn't supposed to activate.
Are you suggesting that this was deliberate? It wasn't an accident, or?
it's very
Insight
much
check.
Oh, okay, yeah. Insight check. Sure.
I always forget to do that. People lie.
Conveniently,
It's
I
true.
have no insight, so I don't know.
I don't even know what mine is. What is mine? Oh, +3. 20.
You don't get the sense of any deception from him. You get the sense that he is kind of like on his heels a little bit because this meeting is already going very
Weird.
differently than he thought. That you're asking about things he hasn't thought about in a long time, and you have introduced the possibility of something he would very much like to research. And so at this point, he seems sincere.
Yeah. With that, I would offer to let him read the letter if we have it.
So you offer it up?
Yeah, I mean, should we let him see the letter? I mean, there might be
Yes.
something we miss.
It does save time.
And Nedry will flip open his book where he keeps the letter tucked in the back.
Okay. I'm just trying to. I don't have the. Where is that? I was just
Text
gonna
of the
re-
letter.
I was gonna quickly skim the letter myself just to remind myself what some of the details are that Professor Tinthis would key in on.
You want me to drop it into chat?
No, I've got it. Thanks.
Okay.
All right. So I think he reads that and he says, "Well, I suppose I understand a bit better why you've come to me, given this, and it does seem as though that confirms that we are talking about the same people. The thing that I hadn't quite gotten to when we sidetracked about the Midnight Stone, I can't help but imagine that this is all connected now, but I'd confronted them demanded to know what they really wanted to know, what they were really doing. And what they asked me was about how large a probabilistic ward. I mentioned, using the lock as an example, but another use for such a thing could be for hiding something, making it inaccessible. And they asked me how large such a ward could be. And it was here that I made what appears to have been a somewhat unfortunate joke. I asked if they were trying to uncover Dawn's Tear. And anyone who has history or religion can make a check in relation to Dawn's Tear.
I have both of those things. We'll choose history.
Religion plus. Oh,
Yeah, 15.
better,
Is there a way to give advantage on this?
11.
I'm not really.
I don't have either of those.
Okay.
You don't have it. Religion? A cleric doesn't have religion?
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't have it automatically. You pick other things instead. Yeah.
Oh, I thought that was just like. Okay.
Well, it's common that you would, but you don't have to.
I mean, you don't really
Yeah.
need religion when your God just sort of
was
talks to
15
you.
the highest?
Right.
What
What were we rolling for, though?
was history or religion?
Right. If you're proficient in it, so
No.
mine was only a 9.
Okay. So he mentions Dawn's Tear, and then he glances around and doesn't see recognition from anyone, and he just says, "It's an ancient myth about a lost island that supposedly sunk to the bottom of the sea." And I was just joking, trying to ease the tension because they seemed very uncomfortable talking to me. But as soon as I mentioned it, it was like a switch had flipped. I could almost see the gears turning as they decided at that point to close any door they had opened. And they stormed out, accused me of misleading them down a doomed field of study, and promptly stormed out of my office. And I determined later that on that very day, they withdrew from all of their classes at the university and no longer replied to any attempt to contact them. That was the last I ever spoke to them. I still don't know why that joke would have had such a momentous impact on them.
In order to withdraw from classes, you have to do that in person?
Well, you can also just contact the university and say that you're withdrawing from classes. It's not generally something that we have. I don't deal with that. That's enrollment. All I know is when the office administration tells me someone is withdrawn from my class. I mean, it's
Can I just
just
make sure that
paperwork.
Can I just make sure that you didn't misspeak because we are at the institute and you mentioned the university.
Well, yes, but the institute is part of the university. It's like a different complex, but it's part of the same organization. I mean, just think about it like how a real world university has like a research wing, right?
Okay.
Where you have people who are employed by the university, but mostly what they do is research as opposed to teaching, right?
Okay,
And then you
I
have
thought
some
they
that
were
do both,
separate
right?
things.
It's like that. The institute is just the place where they do the high level research in really specialized classes as opposed to the more standard stuff. It's just kind of, it's like the research wing of the overall university organization, but physically it's in a different location.
Gotcha.
So, in case that was unclear.
What about the name Dinethor? Dinethir? I'm not sure how to say it. I've only read it. Does that name mean anything to you?
Well, I, I believe that is that's the ancient name for Dawn's Tear.
Oh,
Huh.
Makes sense.
Well,
Well, I mean, it
I mean,
sounds
all of
kind of like
the
it
archaic
anyways.
language
Yeah.
is, not. I mean, does that make sense?
Um,
I don't
Sort
know.
of
Like
makes sense,
Dinuther,
yeah.
they're talking about Dinuther as something that needs protection, and something with wards. And I know that they seemed concerned when working with me about the idea of enormous wards, and they got angry when I made a joke about Dawn's Tear. Do you suppose? Surely not. Perhaps. I. Dawn's Tear's a myth. It's.
I would imagine that in your kind of research, this sort of phrase comes up all the time, but it seems appropriate. I think it's a possibility.
Well, certainly true.
but
All
is it
sorts of
probable?
extraordinary things happen, but I mean, like Dawn's Tear. I mean, it's the sort of old old sailor's tale of someone's fishing boat got lost at sea and they thought they discovered some strange mysterious island that was not on any maps, and but the hubris of those people caused the sea gods to sink their island. It's nonsense.
Well,
If such a
all
thing existed.
stories, in my experience, have some basis in truth. Now, whether the percentage of the truth is up for debate, but there's usually some grain of it somewhere.
He definitely looks like he's thinking about this. Like there's a conclusion to be drawn in the available data here, and he's just trying to run that hypothesis through his sort of mental checklist to try to say, like, this is something I never could have thought was possible, and yet is it really impossible? And he seems like he's doing that mentally here. He's just kind of. He's almost seems completely absorbed in that for the moment.
Well, it seems like we have more research to do.
I was actually wondering, did you know anything more about them on a personal level? Maybe where they lived, if they had any other friends. Seems unlikely, but he did mention something about a laboratory, and I'm wondering if perhaps what was his laboratory isn't now. Well,
Yeah.
it's sort of a junkyard now, but
I mean, it
I-
appears from, the letter, obviously she doesn't know his fate. So she would have gone on and continued their work, presumably. So,
Well, what I know is that I suppose 85 years ago, they were my apprentices. They came here and assisted me with my work here. And then when they left, I never saw them again. I don't know where they lived. The admissions office might have something. I know that we sent mail to try to inquire and contact even magical sendings, but nothing ever received any response.
What did Izeld look like?
Well, you have to forgive me. It's been a while, and there are a lot of humans here in Pashan. I don't recall it. She did not strike me as uncommon in any specific way. Perhaps a bit tall on average for humans. As I mentioned, I initially took them to be in their early 20s, but later came to suspect that was perhaps not accurate. She was fair in complexion, brown hair, but I am astute enough that I believe that I would have seen through anything that was an illusion. But as I mentioned, I came to suspect that they were, in fact, older than they appeared to be. I don't know if they may have had some other glamours as well.
Did they use any last names? And I would hate to, that the poor record keeper that we would talk to at the, in the administration and just have two first names to give them.
Not that I recall. I don't think they gave surnames. I don't, I certainly don't recall anything.
Well,
So this
So-
midnight stone that he mentions in this letter, you believe that could be recovered?
it's possible that it could be recovered. It may have been destroyed. Nedry thinks that the artifact is very tough, so it may still be there, but right now it's literally buried under a mountain of junk that we would need to shift to find out if it was there.
I think it's more that's a lot of junk to shift.
Yeah.
It's pretty
I-
important, though.
Well, I would be very much interested in participating on any additional study or research that you might wish to perform. I don't know. I'm certain that Lord Relenth is a man of remarkable resources, but we have here at the Institute some of the most advanced arcane laboratory equipment in the world. And I think that we may be able to assist with research beyond even whatever remarkable workshop he has assembled for himself. I would absolutely be interested in a further partnership if that is something that could be arranged.
Well, that is definitely something that's still on the table. First, we would actually have to get our hands on the Midnight Stone. But just to change topics for a moment, Alistair and Isolde, do you know if they had a workshop or if he had a workshop, a laboratory somewhere?
As I mentioned, when they were working for me, they came to my workshop here. I I was not aware of where they went when they left here.
Okay.
But as I mentioned, I believe the admissions would have had their whatever address they listed when they enrolled.
Okay, so we can double check that. And
Although,
if,
as I mentioned, we attempted to contact them at that address after they withdrew from their classes and didn't receive any reply. So,
well, you never know. There
I mean,
might
it appears
be
that
someone still around that we can
So-
talk to.
Alistair killed. No word of Isilda?
No word of Isilde. And yeah, Alistair was, as far as we can tell from the letter, that he was sabotaged and trapped in a pocket dimension and died there.
Did Alistair have any rivals at the school?
Not that I was aware of. Something that, to my mind at the time, made them remarkably adept as apprentices was that they seemed very committed to their work. They were willing to put in long hours at the workshop and did not seem to do much socializing outside of our research. These are things that I valued at the time, but now has a bit of a different cast to it, so to speak.
Do you have any books on the Midnight Stones?
Well, not as such. I think that, well, I think that we have some books in the advanced archives that could be, like, they're not about the Midnight Stones, but they do discuss the kinds of arcane study that Midnight Stones, as you call them, would be associated with, if that makes sense. As I mentioned, these are very technical books. They're not. Forgive me, I do not wish to assume your arcane education. I just know that I am at the pinnacle of my field, if I do say so myself, and these are very technical.
I am apprentice to Master Argus Fincher. Finster. Fincher? Damn, I gotta look it up.
All right. So I suppose these are archives that are not for lending, but I could get you access to the archives if you feel that would be useful to you.
That would be wonderful.
But in exchange, perhaps you could give me some of your notes as to what you discover in your own research.
Sure.
Well, then I hope that we have perhaps the beginnings of a partnership of sorts, and that perhaps Lord Relenth might see the value in the research that I'm doing, especially given that it may in fact be more connected to all of this than even I had previously realized. I must thank you for coming. Alistair and Isilda had always been a lingering curiosity in my mind, always wondering what exactly they had actually been here for. And the idea that Dawn's Tear could be real, and that they were connected to it somehow, seems incredible, but were it to be true, what a discovery.
Well, just judging from what happened to Alistair, perhaps until things are until we discover the real truth behind everything, perhaps it would be wise to not speak of this outside of, this group. I would hate for anything to happen to you.
Yes, well, likewise.
Yeah, if he were truly sabotaged, we should keep all of this
Do you have any idea
on the
who
down
would
low.
have done it? He just describes the enemy in this letter. Who would that be?
It's pretty vague.
It was something about those who would. What was it exactly? Release the Seal of Nightmares? Was that it? It sounded very scary.
Does that mean anything to you?
Does not, I'm afraid. My. I would not have made any connection to any of this before, but like my understanding of the myth of Dawn's Tear, I wouldn't connect that to nightmares. I mean, other than presumably it's not fun to have an island be sunk to the bottom of the sea.
Maybe it was sunk for a purpose.
Oh, does the name Marushka mean anything to you?
Some seafaring spirit, yes?
Well, that does make sense. If we are talking about an island, it would make sense that they would have a deity associated with the ocean.
Yes, Marushka's grace. Interesting. So, uh, I believe that that may be all I have to offer you here in this room, but perhaps we can forge some sort of understanding about whatever you discover as you pursue this.
I think that sounds fair. You've been quite helpful. Oh, and if there's anything else that you should remember that it could be anything, some snippet of a conversation that at the time didn't mean anything, but suddenly you see it in a new light. You could contact us. We are at the Castle Relent at the airport, or the port, what is it called again?
Skyport.
The Skyport. That's what it's not an airport. Skyport.
At the
Rent a
airport.
motel by
Hilton.
the airport.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, of course.
And even should you, I mean, you could contact any of us for certain, but I'm sure that even Lord Relent himself, if it was something, you know, of an emergent nature, then would absolutely hear you.
Please forgive my asking, but given everything we've now discussed, what exactly is your relationship with Lord Relent? Are you under his employ, or
We are.
going to talk to professors?
This is part of the research, yes?
Uncovering mysteries, helping people.
Well, I guess.
All right then. So I will be in touch, I suppose, if I think of anything else. You'll be in touch if you locate the Midnight Stone?
Oh, of course.
Indeed.
And while I don't have any official standing here at the university, I would like to hear more about your research, especially where it applies to abjuration.
Well, I mean, I have published several articles on. I have quite an extensive bibliography. If you choose to, I mean, I'm in the journals.
I will be looking forward to looking you up in the other archives. I don't have access to the main ones.
Well, I mean, I'm sure Lord Relent can arrange that.
Yeah. He probably can.
Certainly, if you have any trouble with that, I can also facilitate at least access to the archives.
Well, I believe that our next stop is actually the university library. So,
A letter from
maybe-
you would go very far to helping us on this.
He reaches down into a pocket of his robe, pulls out like a little notepad, and he just like scrawls on it with like this little sort of quill that flips up, and scrawls on it this note that he hands over, and you look, and it's basically just kind of a chicken scratch scrawl of "let them whatever." He wrote it in kind of a hurry, but it's like he does sign it, Tinthus.
Now I really want to laminate it.
That's exciting, you guys. I like that letter. Let them do whatever.
Thank you very much for your time, Professor. It's been incredibly enlightening and very helpful.
Indeed, in both directions. I look forward to our continued research relationship.
Mention
Absolutely.
to Lord Releth your help in this matter.
Wonderful.
Okay.
So-
I suggest
go-
that we go to admissions before we go to the library.
I'm going to take a look at that letter and then slip it in the back of my book with the other
So-
documents.
Sure.
Nedry, you wrote down everything from the Speak with Dead, right?
Of course. I even annotated it.
The talk about releasing the nightmares was not in the letter.
No,
it had to be from the Speak with Dad. Can
It
you just
was.
refresh us as to what was said?
1 second. I have to go through my notes. We asked about who or what the enemy was, and his answer was essentially those who would seek to break the seals and unblock the nightmares. If we are dealing with some sort of pocket dimensions, maybe they were blocked up in one. I wonder if Denethir was one of those places where nightmares were locked up.
I
Doesn't
don't
seem like
know.
much of a home, though.
I mean, I don't know about that, but I was really intrigued by the idea that, you know, should we, I mean, could we try to see if, you know, the Dawn's Tear was a real thing? Like, is that like one of the mysteries that we could explore? Because that sounds really cool, right?
That does sound very cool. We should do
Sounds like
some
it's
more
at the center
research
of all
on
of
that.
this.
I would be really down for going to the bottom of the sea. That's,
Well, I don't know about that.
Well, and it's like I said about stories, there's usually a grain of truth to them. So whether it was physically sunk or it um could be it was just sort of obfuscated somehow or
It could be in someone else's basement.
Another pocket dimension.
Or maybe a closet. Or just
Or
like a house that
Really?
looks like a house, but it's actually a whole island.
either way, clearly somebody was trying very, very hard to protect it. Two people that we know of for sure. And there are two things that are guarded that way. Things that are very, very dangerous. And things that are very, very powerful. And sometimes it's both.
I mean, the word nightmares kind of suggests dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean like the whole entire island was that. That's
Yeah.
I'm feeling like that's just where this seal is. That
Yeah.
is, yeah.
the nightmare could be like the defense to the rest of the place. So, just like the guard dog at the door.
Sort of
We
like
have to find out what
how
happened to
Mount
Azal.
Rushama stood against the forces of chaos trying to, come into this world. So anyway,
All right. So you are making your way out of this institute building. Where were you headed next?
Admissions, I think.
Admissions.
Okay. I think, um, without needing to role play too much, I think there's like the admissions office is also just like it's a very sort of bureaucratic sort of thing, rather than having these deep stacks of just file folders and all of that sort of thing. They have what appears to be enchanted scrolls that just seem to like that infinitely can kind of scroll in one direction or the other. With the combination of some stuff on it that has Lord Relenth's name and this note from Professor Tinthus, you are able to look up some records. I think part of what you're doing, like the implication of if you were trying to look up like current students, they would have been a little more wary. But when you're saying, yeah, the address of a student that withdrew 85 years ago, they're like, oh, well, okay. I mean, that seems harmless. But what you encounter at that point is that the basically there are two addresses listed. one of which you recognize because it is, in fact, the address where the Cunning Oaf had been. So that address was definitely associated with the two of them. And then another one is basically just an apartment building in the old city. But at the same time, what it has listed there is that the address is considered defunct. And you know what? I'll just hand wave and just say, you ask what that means to the person there, and they say, well, they put the addresses in a couple of different categories. So if someone had just moved, it wouldn't make it defunct. Defunct probably means that the building itself is no longer there, like it was torn down and something else is there now.
We should get both addresses just in case. So I think we have.
We can't
definitely-
make any assumptions.
Yeah, well, we have definitely circled back, and since things occasionally move in this city when you're not looking at them, the building may still be around. It just may be a few doors down or a few streets over, and
Or maybe
know
they
if that
built
would
something
help
else
us.
there and didn't realize there was a basement.
possibly.
Or maybe our realtor friend might have some information on that particular address.
Quite possibly. I think we will call them Address 1 and Address 2.
Okay.
Address 1 being the Cunning Oaf.
All right. So, where to next?
I think we should go talk to Librarian Everhart.
Okay.
Yes.
So the archives for that particular library archive is in the old city as well, the old campus, where everything is a lot more kind of ornate and impressive and designed to have this grand campus where you walk through like a path along amongst grass and trees while these fancy old buildings kind of tower above you, and lots of we work in a fancy building and that's why we're better than you sorts of architecture. And but it's actually quite a nice place to walk through and have lunch, I would think. And it's a highly specialized sort of place. This is where classic like magicians would study. And although it's certainly true in the last 100 years or so, there's a lot more study in magic where people study to become what's known as mage-rights, where I mentioned that they tend to specialize in some particular field of magic, where they're not necessarily ever even aspiring to the heights of level 4 spells or even above. It's more a matter of choosing some specialized spells and getting really good at those, and that's kind of your ambition because it's functional and you become a professional as a result of having those spells. But this part of the university is where it's a little bit more classic. You have the different schools of the different schools of magic, and different administrators and professors and everything. But then, of course, they do have a big library, where the archives of the library, and there is in fact a spirit of this university district that is basically an old it's an owl that looks kind of extremely like wizened with big eyebrows, and it just sort of floats around the trees and glowers at people generally. But you make your way to the university archives and make your way in, and how do you sort of present as you show up to the archives?
I have a quick question, or Trina has a question for Nedry, actually. How are you doing with all this walking, Nedry? Are you all right?
Well, I'm highly motivated to go to all these places, so I'm kind of making an effort. It's a lot of walking for one day, though. That's for
Well,
sure.
if you want to ride up on my back or shoulder, wherever you're more comfortable, then you could take notes while we're getting there instead of just after we stop. I don't
That
mind. I don't
that
feel
would
very
be
useful right now, so that would be something for me to do.
that would be really nice. I've never really seen the world from that high up,
Right on.
and
So,
maybe this will make me look more important, and they won't throw me out this time.
they threw you out last time. That's good to know.
It was a misunderstanding,
Of
mostly.
course. I'm not at all surprised. So, yeah, she's gonna.
So let's talk about that a little bit, Nedry. Like, do they have your picture
Right?
behind the counter, or what are we talking about here?
Well, he would probably outline the story as you walk along, if prompted at all. Somewhat embarrassingly. I got a chance to go here quite a while ago. Master Finster got me a pass for a day, and I was looking up some specific things for him, but I saw a lot of other books, so I was looking through those other books, and they had specific spells. So I thought, well, I'm here. I have the ink. I have the time. I can probably do what he needed and what I needed for a while. And so I found a particular spell. I forget the name of it offhand because Mark just forgot the name of it, which is really stupid. Oh shoot. I will draw a blank in a moment, but well, I found it was really important. I'm forgetting the name of the spell, but it's the one that creates a platform, an invisible
Oh,
platform,
Tensor's
floating disc. That's
floating
it.
disc. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I had to try it out to make sure that I understand the spell well enough, and I was able to do it from the spell book that they had. I can do that from time to time if I see a spell and can understand it. Then I can usually be able to sometimes. Well, it takes me longer, but I can kind of cast it. And then I wanted to see how strong it was, so I started piling books on top of it. It got really, really high, and I had to stack another set of books so I could stack more books on top of it. And well, they kind of fell over and knocked over 3 bookshelves
Oh,
and made them out of order. I offered to sort them again for me, but they seemed rather insistent that I should leave, and they told me never to come back. I don't know if Master Finster knows, but I never got a pass to go back again. And I never really learned that spell either. I only copied about half of it.
Is this another sign forms and triplicate situation to get inside? Do we
so
need subterfuge?
the
Well,
way
I was
that-
there as a day researcher, and that needed a lot more forms, I guess.
Yeah, I think the general way that it works is that they do have a selection of books that are, available for anyone who wants to just show up and read those. But it's not a lending library in the sense that you can't take books out, but you can go there and sit in the reading room and read them. But then if you want anything that's not in that sort of public selection, you request it of one of the librarians, and then they bring it out to you and you read it there. But as a result of that, there's various sort of tiers of access that you might have, depending on what it is that you request. But yeah, I think you all sort of pass through the front doors and you look over to like sort of the
Actually, before we do that,
Sure.
Just in listening to this story of Nedry's, I was just thinking perhaps it might be wise if, I mean, I have this disguise kit, so perhaps if I just do a few little tweaks to Nedry, they won't question it even at all.
What do you mean, tweaks?
Just a few little changes to your appearance. Nothing permanent. Nothing magical. Nothing fancy like that. But just maybe something that, because you have sort of a very iconic look. You're very memorable.
Ah, that's the same word my mom used. My dad had other words.
So, what do you think? Just a few little touches? Maybe just to make this go smoother so we can get in quicker?
Maybe. It feels kind of weird, though. I mean, I guess if it makes it easier.
Well,
I mean, we have the note, and we have the librarian to speak with. But yeah, I'm just trying to think that maybe if there is anything that we can do in advance to, make this go smoothly.
well, maybe one thing that we could do in advance to make this go more smoothly is, Nedry, would you maybe not try out any spells while we're inside that might knock over bookshelves?
I mean, I don't know how long we're going to be in there.
I don't
That
have
that's a good
rules
point. That's a good
against
point.
doing that.
Well, that's what I'm saying is maybe we could all just kind of agree to just go there for the intended purpose and not draw any extra attention to ourselves. Like by casting a new spell in the middle of the place and
They
stacking.
have all those books.
Right, but remember Dawn's Tear? And doesn't that sound interesting?
Yeah,
And that would help everybody here, right?
I know. I know. I'm not a child. I know.
Well,
But
I
it's
know
just
you're
there's
not
so
a
many books
child.
there, and I don't get a chance to see so many books. Master Finster's library is very specialized, and sometimes I'm curious about other magics and stuff. But if it makes it easier,
It makes it possible if you can't get in because you've been banned before. If they detect you through the disguise, which I'm sure Carolina has an amazing disguise, but I mean, I expect they have some.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to, make over his entire person. I was just thinking, a little bit of, differing the color, maybe
Sure.
deepening any age lines, things like that. Nothing.
Yeah.
I'm not going to put, try to make him look like an orc or anything.
I'd be pretty short for an orc.
Sure.
I guess the point I was trying to make is that you could make him into an orc and make him completely unrecognizable, but if he casts a spell in the middle of the library, they're going to start paying attention to him and probably make him leave. May have to build up some trust there with the
Like
librarians.
just a small spell, maybe? I could
No spells.
probably hide it.
I don't think you should give him a disguise, Carolina. I think
Well, should we consider it a learning opportunity then?
Hey, you're really starting to sound like my dad.
it's just that we have things to do and people waiting for us is all. We have to take that responsibility seriously. I promise there will be time for magic spells. I
Time
promise.
for research, and the piece of paper that lets us in doesn't go away. So let's do this today, and maybe we'll have time in the future, in the not so distant future, to do the kind of research that you want while, you don't exactly look like yourself.
I'm sure that contract had recreation days in there somewhere.
Yep.
Yeah,
Jack.
I was just sort of looking forward to looking up a couple of references that I've been thinking about for a while. But I guess I can put that off for another day
Thank you.
if I have to.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think you do.
I don't know. I mean, you guys tell me what you're doing.
We're going to the library.
Okay, but is Nedry getting disguised?
No, I'm gonna let it play out.
Okay.
All right. Why were we going to the library again?
Well, we have a bunch of different things that we can look up now.
Okay. Oh, that's right. We need to look up stuff in general.
Yeah, Marushka and originally it was Dinuther, but now we know that means Dawn's Tear.
Right. So we want to know about Dawn's Tier, Denethor, and Marushka to
There
start
was-
with.
Night stones.
Yeah, there was also the stuff about the Midnight Stones, which I think seems more in Nedry's interest there.
So here's the thing, because like going to a library and researching stuff like this is not just like you're Googling on the internet, right? We're talking about like you're going to have one role that essentially reflects the rest of the day of seeing if you can find information that's useful at all and then actually reading it. So
Google.
I'm just telling you what this activity entails is
Okay.
you will attempt to find some information which will be reflected by a roll, and we will pass the afternoon with you trying to see what you can get out of whatever books you get. Sound good?
Yep.
Yeah.
All
So
right.
what
the
subject are we
role?
focused on?
Well,
I think
you don't.
this
Are you
afternoon.
all going to sit around one table in one book, or
Oh, true. Huh?
Yeah, I
we
think
should
I think
split
it
up.
might be best to split the work up here.
Yeah.
Got a lot of areas
Well-
to tackle.
Yep. I'm gonna look up Dawn's Tears.
all right? So one thing I'll note though is that as you enter, and Nedry not being disguised, like the librarian at sort of the front desk just does look up as you're all entering, and then just kind of squints. Nope. Up. You,
I have a note. Two, actually.
Is it a note from the head librarian rescinding your ban?
It's a note for a librarian.
Is there a librarian
Everhart?
Everhart?
Yes.
Perfect. That's who we're here to see.
Well, the rest
All of us. Together.
No, not you. You leave.
Lord Relenth might take offense at that. So before you pass that particular judgment, you might want to look at the papers that we have with us.
Make a persuasion check.
$19.
Ooh.
So this is pretty typical then, is the nobles just come in, they think they can do whatever they want, break all the rules. All right, show me your papers, whatever they are.
I show him the two papers that we have.
Okay.
And I also say, we will keep an eye on Nedry.
So what
There
you
will
have
be no
essentially.
repeat.
Okay, well, so what you have that has Lord Relent on it is actually it's essentially the sort of thing that you would give to like a store to say, put whatever this purchase is on Lord Relent's line of credit. So that's
Okay.
what you have that has his name on
Right.
it. But it does suggest that you are working for him and have some degree of responsibility. But like it's not like,
Yes.
here's your access. But so I think he looks at that and reads it kind of with a frown. He sees that other letter from Professor Tinthus, and he just like kind of scoffs at that, and then just hands that back to you and says, I suppose if you'll all watch him, I will go get Librarian Everhart.
I give you my word. as a cleric of Rushama, I will watch him.
All right. So just so it's clear, I didn't let him in. If Librarian Everhart wants to, that's on him.
I'm really, really sorry. I got caught.
And
Didn't finish
And?
copying the spell.
this time you're going to
Write faster.
follow
This
the
guy's
rules.
already left. He's not listening to any of this.
I know. I'm still trying to get something out of
That's-
Nedry.
That's great. That's great.
He's
I'm just-
ignoring that,
Yeah.
but follow the rules. This time.
Not cast any spells today in here.
This is getting to be a really long list.
I'm just saying, follow the rules, please. Between friends,
All right, I'll follow the rules.
thank you.
He starts looking around to see what the posted rules are.
That'll keep him distracted, hopefully.
I mean, I think the posted rules are relatively like just, quiet please, that sort of thing. I mean, it's not like there's a big here's the rules of the public archive. It's more like it's expected that you know what you're doing, and infractions like they don't feel like they have to put a sign that says what the rules are in order to enforce the rules. They just if you break the rule, they tell you. And if the infraction is severe enough, then they tell you more forcefully. But yeah, so eventually, are you all just staying in the sort of like the waiting, this front foyer sort of place? Before too long, an old Air Genasi comes through, and he's got light blue skin. White hair that looks almost like it's blowing in a breeze that you certainly don't feel here in this room. He's kind of tall and very slender, but has kind of a sort of a dreamy smile on his face, and he just comes out and just says, "Ah, yes. Are you all Lord Relent's charges then? Hmm?
Yes.
Very
Yes.
well. He spoke with me, and I assured him that I would allow you access to books that you felt were necessary for your research. I think that there are some books that we would have to have further discussion of, but certainly public archives and some of the less secure volumes would certainly be accessible to you. I am told that we have a banned individual. Is that you?" And he looks down at Nedry.
Are you still up on my shoulders? On Trina's shoulders?
I think you let him down so he could go look for the rules. And I kind of got the impression that the two people were kind of leaning over him, trying to pressure him as well.
I guess it's my name on the paper.
Young man, I think that your enthusiasm for books and learning is quite laudable. But when you knock shelves over, it makes it difficult for others to learn too.
I know.
So let's not knock anything over and come with me to the reading room. And so he basically will, you tell him what you want to look up. He is going to go select whatever he thinks is the most appropriate book. You let him know if you feel like at some point you want a different one. That's basically how this works. So, Zinhorn is going to look up Dawn's Tear. Anyone else have a different topic or? I mean, if you guys want to double up, that's fine. We'll basically, it's going to be an investigation roll, and you could have advantage potentially if you have more than one person. But you can't
think
have more than
Nedry-
two people on any one book.
Yeah. I'll assist somebody. I don't know.
I'll assist somebody too. My intelligence and wisdom are low, so
Yeah, my investigation is not great.
I have all of those things.
Nedry would be looking up Midnight Stones.
Okay.
So Alice is Nedry from a respectful distance because I know he's annoyed with her need to follow the rules and follow order.
Sure, sure.
Actually, my investigation is +5, so I could take lead.
Ooh.
That would be good. Yeah.
I was gonna say I thought so. Right.
Which aspect? Just trying to think of the name of the organizations from Alistair's letter. And
it
my
was
notes are
Marushka.
lacking.
Marushka
I mean-
was one of them.
Yeah, and
One of the
Denethor would
names.
be
Yeah.
another thing to potentially look up. Although that,
Well-
I mean, looking
Yeah,
at,
we think that. Yeah,
I don't
we
know if
got
that would be included in the Dawn's tier or not.
So Marushka, yeah.
I mean,
Marushka?
well, if Professor Tinthus is right about what he said, you
Yeah.
believe
Yeah.
that it's essentially, it's almost like just two pronunciations of the same.
Mm.
Yeah.
Still worth looking up the other one though to see if there's any other
Yeah.
references or information in it.
Okay. All right. So we've got Midnight Stones for Nedry, Dawn's Tear for Zinhorn, and Dinethera
Marushka.
separately or Marushka?
Marushka.
Okay. Great.
I have another request, which I would speak to the librarian about privately.
Okay.
Cool.
So is as you and I have discussed offline? Yes. So we have a bit of behind the scenes stuff happening there. I'm still gonna have you make a roll, and everyone else can just wonder what that's all about.
Nice.
So it sounds like Zinhorn and Sequential are each doing their own solo. Trina is giving advantage for Nedry's.
I mean, she's watching him. That's for certain.
Well, you know what? That's probably true. If all you're really doing is making sure he sit. You know what? I think for Nedry, just having someone give you a little bit of discipline to just sit in one spot and read one book probably actually really does help.
That actually is a really good point.
Yeah. Like,
Respectfully.
yeah. So, okay. So let's start with Zinhorn researching Dawn's Tear. Let's see an investigation check.
I rolled a 15.
15. Okay. So what you do find is that in the mythology section, which is, indicated as stuff that, like, there's a lot of lore and stories about, but is not something that has ever been, like confirmed with solid detail. Meaning,
Right.
what is known is only stories people told about it. There doesn't seem to be, as far as you can tell, anyone who's writing about, like, artifacts found or witnesses. It seems to really all be like legends passed down over time and not anything that really concrete. But what you do find, like the stories that are told about Dawn's Tear, is that it supposedly was an island that was to the east of the continent in Sekamian, and it was so named because that at sunrise, it was very difficult to find, but the times that you could find it was on this specific day. The spring equinox. It would be silhouetted by the rising sun in the east, and so it was called Dawn's Tear because, like, it was as though the rising sun had a tear. That's what the name comes from. But it was supposedly very difficult to find because it was a very protective, like, it was a place, like, there's variations on this of whether these were people who had a lot of treasure or whether they were people that had very powerful magic or something. But the stories are all about how they had a lot of hubris and they angered powerful spirits, and as a punishment they were sunk to the bottom of the sea, and that it's a warning that if you have the hubris to try to reach the heights of Dawn's Tier, you will find yourself instead sunk to the bottom of the ocean instead. And it's, again, it ties in a little bit with you know there's a lot of dismissive writing about it, because the essence of the lesson is a little bit, like to modern eyes, it's a little bit regressive, meaning it's a little bit like a Luddite sort of thing of like, don't try to change the world and make things better, because you'll just make things worse instead, and that sort of thing. But that's basically the myth of Dawn's Tier, is that it was this place where people pushed the boundaries of what was possible, but were ended up destroyed by it, by their reach exceeding their grasp.
Okay.
All right. So, Nedry, looking up Midnight Stones. And specifically, I think probably in the context of what Professor Tinthus had said, right? Because
Yeah.
So, go ahead and make a check.
Question: does my gifted scribe background element come into play?
Probably. Remind me what it says.
When you make an intelligence history check or an ability check using calligrapher's supplies, you can roll a d4 and add that number to the ability check.
Oh, yeah. So even though, like, I was saying investigation, but I think history probably also, well, okay, yes and no. I think if you were looking up something that was about history, like if you wanted to know history of Midnight Stones, that's maybe a little bit different than what are Midnight Stones and how are they used and what's the current scientific understanding, right?
I guess whether they were, they were described as artifacts, which sounds like a historical thing, not necessarily a practical thing. But starting from that point and then trying to find the practical.
So I'll
from there.
just say that, like, for my own sense, I don't want you to always assume that if I use the word artifact, that definitely means
Sure.
something that's ancient. That's not my intention. But you don't really know one way or the other. So I guess what I'm saying is, if you want it to be a history check, you can use that, but you'll get a history answer as opposed to an arcana type answer, right?
Okay. No, I won't use that then.
Okay.
And I have advantage from Overwatch. That is a dirty 20.
Okay, that's pretty good. So you definitely recall the context that Professor Tinthus has suggested, which is that Midnight Stone is not really like the accepted term for what these are, but it is one name some people have used to describe something that has been called other things at other times. But what is generally understood about them right now is that while it's certainly true that all manner of different mundane objects can be enchanted and imbued with various different kinds of magical energies, it's true that there are some types of material that are much more readily able to take on magical energies than others. It's one reason that gemstones in particular tend to be very receptive to certain types of magic and that sort of thing. It's also part of why they end up so expensive and that sort of thing. But the type of material tends to influence how much magic can be brought into them. And so the substance that is sometimes called Midnight Stones, when it is polished and finished into like a final sort of presentation, is made from a material that has a lot of different, names, but is generally considered one of the more priceless kinds of material, in the sense that it is so uncommonly found that it's, it's very useful, but almost there's a fairly small market for it because there's not really enough of it for lots of people to even really have ever had access to it. So it tends to, where it's used, be used only in very high level, very specialized sorts of applications. And
Is there another name for that then? For the substance?
yes, I will send you some later.
Sure.
What I'll say is that there is no current clue to the mystery associated with what other names they have. But I, just for flavor, I'll give you some. But yeah. So what you know about it is that this material can be imbued with so much magical energy that part of the other reason, like it's not used as frequently because it's so scarce, and because generally speaking, the only reason you would ever need it is when you are doing something that requires way more energy than some other material could hold, which is almost always going to be really dangerous unless you are very experienced. So that's another reason that it tends to only be at very high level, is because unless you're very high level, you could absolutely make do with something else instead. It doesn't need to be this. But also B, if what you're doing is something that is high level enough to need something like this, you better know what you're doing, or else you're going to blow yourself up, or worse, because there are worse things that can happen. But I think that's probably what you glean, is that, like, so midnight stones themselves tend to be like the finished product. Like, it's made of a certain material, but what you would call a midnight stone is when you have made something with that material, enchanted it, finished it, and you have the final sort of result of it. And that's what you would call a midnight stone. But like what it could do could vary in all sorts of different ways depending on how it was constructed and what it was constructed to do.
Is it described as single purpose? Like once you've created the Midnight Stone version, then nothing more can be made of it? It only has that purpose?
Generally speaking, yes, but like it's a little bit in like any other material that would be enchanted in that way. Is that for most people who enchant objects, like, it's enough work to do that you wouldn't sort of casually say, well, here, I think today it'll be, an umbrella stand, and then tomorrow it'll be a bookshelf. It's like, you decide what it is that you need it to do, and then you spend weeks, months, or years, and a lot of resources and a lot of magical energy making it do whatever you need it to do. So it's not so much that it couldn't theoretically be reworked, but it's a question of, like, that doesn't happen very often because you usually wouldn't bother making it unless you really needed it to be that.
Cool.
So they are, like I said, pretty scarce still, but the generally speaking would only be found in the workshops of very high level arcane practitioners. All right, sequential.
Yeah. Investigating. 17 plus 4, 21.
Okay.
Blackjack.
21. All right, so what you study about Marushka tells you, first of all, the basics of what you had already heard is accurate, that it is a spirit that is associated primarily with ocean voyages and worshipped primarily by people who sail, go out in boats on the water specifically. And so there's some discussion about whether, now that there's airships and that sort of thing, like, do airship pilots, if they're going to fly over the water, also pray to Marushka. It hasn't come up that much because the airships are, have not been around that long. And the truth is, there's really not that much need for them to go over the water because what is like there are sea voyages and airships that go over Leviathan's Bay. So if you recall, the continent of Sakamian is kind of, U-shaped. It has two peninsulas and then the bay in between. But Marushka is specifically associated not with the bay, but with the ocean around. And so usually that only applies to anyone who is either going out fishing or doing some sort of a sea cargo from different places along the coast. And so that spirit is associated with that. And part of what is known about her nature, though, is that as with any spirit, their character tends to take on the energy that is given them. And so what people generally think of with the ocean is that it's big and mysterious and scary. And it can provide good things, but also can be very unpredictable and, and potentially dangerous if you're not careful. And so generally speaking, the rituals to pray to Marushka are asking for things like good weather, safe navigation, and that sort of thing. But there's always a little bit of an appeasement quality to it. Like, it's not just, oh, I know you are so generous that you would bestow upon me good weather. It's more like, I make this offering in the hope that you would see fit as to grant me a safe passage for my husband instead of drowning him at sea. That sort of thing, right? So Marushka's sort of demeanor is generally is pretty like aloof, like does not actually appear to people very often at all in any way. And generally speaking, is only thought to display their feelings about things by displays of the weather or whether or not people do get where they're going and that sort of thing. But again, it's something that is fairly common in like the coastal communities where there are people who actually make their livings with boats, but not really anywhere else because again, like in a landlocked city like Pashan, like not very many people have anything to do with the ocean. So it's a lot less common, out here. But would certainly, like the average person in a coastal town would know who Marushka is, even if they don't necessarily have any rituals or pray to her at all. But it is something, though, that there's a little bit of most sailors don't go far from the coast. And in fact, the idea of even going far enough that you can't see the land is considered kind of foolhardy and dangerous. And most people would say that, like, that's risking Marushka's ire to do that. But there are a minority of people who think that by being bold enough to show that you are, you dare to embrace Marushka fully by letting go of the land, that sort of bravery and boldness will be rewarded with good fortune in general. But a lot of people think that seems really risky and stupid, and in their experience, a lot of the people who are that bold actually just go out there and don't ever come back, so how well does it work really? But there are a handful of sailors who swear by it. But so I think that's probably what you glean about Marushka in an afternoon of reading.
Cool.
So, you know, how does how? I think that probably is, you know, it's starting to get around sunset here at the day. Oh yes. Oh, go ahead and make your roll, Carolina.
Well, I was actually going to ask.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not great at investigation,
Mm-hmm.
but would it be possible to persuade the librarian to help me?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a higher check because they're like to sit there with you and research it in detail. Actually, okay, I take that back. It's not a higher check. But there's no way to do it without them knowing what you're looking up. Like, if they're helping you by actually, like, seeing all the same stuff you're seeing.
Well, I mean, in theory, they'd only see the books that I was looking at.
Well, how are they helping
And
you
may or
otherwise?
may or may not, may or may not. Well, no, I was talking about the rest of the party,
Oh,
right?
okay. I thought you were asking the librarian to help you research. Isn't that what you said?
Well, what I was thinking is like, help me, like point me in the right direction.
Okay,
Like
so
there was
asking
like,
the
I don't-
librarian about what you want to research and having them go and get a book they think will help and bringing it back to you is already what's happening.
Okay.
If you want advantage by having them help you in more depth, that is potentially an option, but it is at the cost of them also knowing what you look up and what you learn.
Being all up in your business.
Yeah. I mean, up to you.
Not us, just the librarian.
The librarian, I don't so much care about. Like, I think I'm willing to risk that one.
Okay.
Oh. Yeah. So, like, what do I?
Yeah,
what do you want me to roll
investigation.
then? Investigation. Okay.
Yeah. Ah,
That
stupid. I'm moving stuff because every time people turn their cameras on or off, it moves everybody. All right.
all right. That's a 14.
Okay. A 14. Well, I mean, I'll tell you offline what you
Okay.
what you learned. All right. So everybody has gotten some good reading in, and I think that since you are here in the old campus, which is in the old city, it's probably not the shortest way back to the Skyport, but you know that this real estate office was just inside the north gate of the old city. Like, it's not that far out of the way. So, up to you if you feel like that would be a tomorrow thing or what.
Well,
Because it's after sunset, you might have to like talk your way in because it would not just be open, but up to you.
yeah. Might have to kick that one to the next day.
All right.
People are probably getting hungry too.
All right. So everyone heading back then to Sunia and the castle. All right.
Is
Sounds like a
trying to
plan.
offering the lift again.
Yes. She is refreshed from the bathroom and happy to give you a lift.
Then Nedry would be kind of poised on her shoulder, trying to write as much as he can by the dim light.
All right. So I think as you are making your way back, you are almost all the way back to the castle. Do you take the stairs up, or you're paying for the lift again? Like, you guys have an income now, so.
Yeah, but I
that-
took the stairs.
Oh yeah.
Totally,
Yeah.
man. Work out.
Sure,
Build
sure.
Yep.
those muscles.
All right. So I think you're making your way. You're making your way up there, and the so I think Nedry, you get a sending from. Gosh, would it be Nedry? I'm just trying to think. Like, as you guys make as a group impression, when an NPC wants to contact you, who is the person in the group that they choose, right? Because you guys are kind of like, I don't know. I mean, Zinhorn kind of comes across as the leader, I think, a lot of the time.
Seems like an adult.
Yeah. You know what? I think
Depends on the
I think
situation.
actually in this case it would be Carolina. But so Carolina, it's Professor Tinthus contacts you with a sending, and he says, "I did think of one other thing. I don't know if it's connected, but the attack on the Reclaimers Academy was shortly after they withdrew." And so that's what you get, and you can make a history check if you want.
$15.
You're not sure. You feel like you maybe heard something about something called the Reclaimers Academy, but it was a long time ago. You don't really know.
All right. Well, I would send back. Thank you. We'll be looking into that. And then pass on the message to my compatriots here who might know more.
Right? Anyone
Has
else want?
anyone else heard of the Reclaimers Academy?
I don't know.
Well, you guys want, those of you with history want to give it a try?
Right?
And this
I
time
do
it is a
not
history
have
check,
history.
so I will apply gifted scribe.
Alright.
Wow. That is all the things. That's the maximum both dice. That's a natural 20, bringing it to 29.
Okay.
Wow.
So yeah, what you definitely know then. So the Reclaimers Academy was a like pre message, like the big battle of the heroes of legend. It predates that even. It's um, but it's not really old Empire stuff. It is about 150 years ago that a new order was founded by a general of the Tashmian Empire named Everett Chanticleer, where he was not of noble birth, but he achieved so much in his military career, and in particular recovered so many magical treasures for the Empire that he was, rose to the rank of general. He was made a noble, and given a commission to create an academy where he would pass on his expertise in the recovery of magical items and artifacts from dangerous places. And this is like I said, 150 years ago that this was founded. And so the academy was this big school in the city that was actually pretty secretive. Like, people knew the academy was there, but they really didn't attract attention to themselves. They tended to, like, as an organization, they tended to be like aggressively loyal to the Empire, which means what they recover and what their missions are and everything comes straight from the top, and they are not for the discussion of others. Their training methods, their missions, and all of those things are pretty secretive. Like, people know the academy is there, but it's a little bit like saying, I know that the NSA exists, right? But that doesn't mean I know what they do on a day-to-day basis, right? But it was this was something that is a history check and not a, hey, what's that building over there check, because about 85 years ago there was some kind of an attack, and there is really not very much understanding of what happened, and it's generally accepted that it's because there's some sort of an enormous cover-up about it. because what information there is like 7 different stories that all contradict each other. So, which it has all the hallmarks of deliberate disinformation to cloud whatever the real issue is, right? But what is known is that there was this academy of secretive, that trained people to be part of this secretive, high prestige. High prestige and secretive don't really match. High level, I guess, high expertise organization, and that there was some kind of accident or attack or something that just destroyed them. Like the building was there, but pretty much everyone associated with it was either dead or gone or disappeared somewhere. And so it essentially eliminated the whole organization overnight because everyone was gone. And it was one of those things where for a lot of people who really just vaguely knew, oh, isn't there a building inside that big wall over there? I guess it's a thing. And now there's still a building there and it doesn't look any different than it did before. And I still don't know anything about it. Like for most people, it wasn't even a big deal. But for people who do have interest in things like recovery of magical artifacts and history of the city and wanting to know about things that the Empire likes to cover up, that was a big story in conspiracy circles. Was there was this huge, top secret, powerful organization wiped out overnight and no one can really figure out exactly what happened. And now what you're hearing, and you're kind of connecting these dots, is that happened at about the time, like as Tinthus points out, like about the time that he's talking about where they pulled out of school and everything. And that presumably Ellister was attacked. Like, it was all about that time.
Cool. Yeah, I imagine Nedry's saying all that very excitedly, having remembered this strange story, having forgotten the date until it was kind of pointed out, and then tying that bit together. As he's talking kind of animatedly on Trina's shoulder, you probably also notice this little green vial that's around his throat kind of throb with a little bit of energy. And he kind of notices it and keeps talking, but sort of tucks it under his shirt. As well as kind of continuing on at length about every little tidbit every little rabbit hole he can imagine from this story. Probably also inserting a few of the weird conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
Like the entire place was one family. It was actually one person, and that one person vanished and they all disappeared, but that was some sort of strange time magic nobody can actually explain. Or another theory was that they didn't actually go anywhere. That was all a big campaign of misdirection. The Tajman Empire had a hit on them, like a whole bunch of weird stories.
Yeah. I think that one was one of the big theories, was that like this whole idea that they were wiped out and that and that they're all gone and that they don't operate anymore. Like that's the lie for a lot of people. Like they're saying, of course they're still around, still doing their thing. The whole thing was a plant of a story to cover so that people don't even know that they're still around doing stuff. That was definitely one of the big theories. But then there's also just, theories about like, they brought back the wrong thing and attracted the wrong, attention of powerful creatures that killed them all, or they were consorting with demons that ate them, or who knows, like there's also like the stories are all over the place. But like, to someone, with a keen observation of this sort of thing or an interest in conspiracy theories generally, recognizes that the number of different obviously contradictory stories has the sort of flavor of chaff, like disinformation, like they're putting out a lot of rumors that are not true in order to try to obscure whatever it is that really happened. All right. So I think as you're describing that whole little bit of history, you're on your way back and you're making your way up the gangplank and of the castle. And Sunia greets you and just says, "Welcome back. Sorashana wanted me to tell you that the color escaped."
Uh-oh.
And we'll leave the end of the episode right there, I think.
You know, that news makes me so blue, Christiana.
Aw. That's why they call it the blues.
I guess that's why they call it.
I guess it's a blue Christmas.
Yeah. All right. So we've got some questions already in the chat because we've got regulars in the chat who know what's up. A question for Trina: how did it feel giving your assistance to Nedry?
It felt good. She knew that she was doing right. She trusts Nedry, but knows that Nedry can't always do what Nedry doesn't seem to always be able to do what is best for Nedry. And where she's from, you look out for each other. You don't question it. You just make sure everybody meets their goals. You were solid, loyal folks, and sometimes you get dirty looks when you're helping somebody. They don't really want it, but if it's better for everybody, then that's what you do. If you'd looked closely, though, that's how she felt. But if you'd looked closely, you would have noticed that her lips were moving, and she's not praying or anything like that. It would almost be like she was talking to herself, just like talking to herself about things that she'd seen, paintings, and things like that.
All right. So Smarter Master had asked that, and also, we have Prince Justin asking Nedry, what have you learned from the experience of your return to the library?
It would be a very, very mixed feeling from that. There is a certain acknowledgement that, sure, focus was definitely useful, and he kind of understood that. But and then Trina would have seen this too. He's like, reads a paragraph, looks at the books across for the table from him, reluctantly looks back at this particular paragraph, because and he would have practically been vibrating the entire time, which is this is a place with so much knowledge that he just he wants to read it all. But there is a little bit of the debate. Is it that I have to behave or I have to not get caught?
All right. Well, we promised, but behind the scenes that we needed to finish by 10. So we're gonna do some slightly more lightning round versions on a couple more of these questions. Smarter Master had previously speculated theory Carolina is the big bad of the campaign, but then asks, may we have a clue into your research?
No.
Asked and answered.
That doesn't help, Starla. That doesn't help. I'm thinking back to when a certain beloved, Lauren Harris, came onto our show, stabbed us right in the hearts.
Yeah.
Right in the hearts.
It's not that interesting.
Well,
When you sell it like that, I'm not convinced. Gotta
well,
say.
it also wasn't just Scribe. I mean, it was Starla again when it was
When she
the
came back.
emergency.
Uh-huh.
Uh-huh.
I see
She has a
now.
history of betraying us, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So we also have for sequential. How do you like doing research like this? I would gather that means like in the library, or perhaps seeing how it's done with the professors at the institute, compared to your background.
Yeah, I would think it would be rather cumbersome because sequential isn't really used to dealing with other people. He's used to, Greg Holm would bring some elements in and then leave him alone, and they would sit at a desk and just plow through it. So having to get up and change books and be very time consuming, yeah, inefficient.
All right. So we also had this is lightning round for everybody. Question for every player: how do you feel you're getting to know and jump into your characters as opposed to previous ones? Chooch.
I think he's doing really well. Yeah, I don't do voices or accents, or at least I don't keep them.
Well, sorry, I'm sort of forcing this because I don't know how important the actual 10 o'clock on the button is. Is it critical for
Not on the bottom. No,
Okay.
I've got
All
the
right.
notes.
Well, so we'll take a moment then. So, like, Starla, how are you feeling?
Still trying to find my feet a little bit because it's very, very, very different than the other character. So yeah, it's a lot of, I know what Nera would have done, and that's not this character. So I have to figure out how Carolina would handle certain situations and certain people, and it's learning process. So
How many times have you been reaching for that? I'm just going to fire a bolt of lightning at this guy.
not gonna lie, would have come in handy.
Mark?
I mean, for me, all the best characters come from finding a part of myself that I want to explore, and Nedry's definitely a big part of that. But also kind of, for me, it's always kind of similar to what Starla said. It's always, what questions does he not ask? How does he ask the wrong question in the right way? And how does he not think about certain things? So I kind of specifically avoid kind of Nedry knowing certain things. And that's fun. And
Sure.
otherwise, it's just making problems for the other characters. So that's kind of fun too.
All right. Viv?
I'm having fun. She's very different. It's easier for me this time than last time. I just feel like I'm better prepared. We didn't move across the country while developing
Yeah.
a character. And kind of like Mark said, I'm kind of trying to play with a different area. Like Starla and I were chatting recently, and she said she expected Trina to behave one way, very nurturing, very Amethyst. And I was like, yeah, but Trina's not Amethyst. She doesn't have that nurturing at all. Like, she's very different. And so it's really been fun giving her a personality, giving her a playlist, giving her like a whole setup, and then just kind of, nope, that's not what she would do. Yep, that's what she would do. And I don't know how the hell I know the difference, but it seems to like be clicking a lot easier for me this time. So
Great. And so, Paul,
Fun.
obviously, you didn't have a character in our previous campaign, but how are you feeling? How are you settling into Zinhorn?
I think I'm still trying to feel out his edges. There's obviously has to be a point at which he stops trying to heal everyone and starts trying to put someone in the ground. And I'm trying to figure out where that particular line is for him. I felt like like running around the China shop trying to keep it from burning down and
Yeah.
burning the sitting down really like helped me figure out like where his thought process was, because this is his adopted home, and it's been very good for him, and he wants to return that favor.
Very nice. All right. Well, I think that does it for tonight. So we're going to leave it there. I believe that everyone should be available next week. Was that what we had previously said? Was there anyone who's not available next week?
oh, I'll be traveling, Christiana. No, I'll be home, of course. I don't go anywhere. This is 2020.
Yes, no one goes anywhere.
Well, of course. When we play next week, though, it will be the last episode of 2020.
Dun, dun, dun.
Oh.
Yeah.
Now it's cursed.
So, we'll leave it there. We'll be back next week for more adventure on so many levels.
So many levels.
levels.